The reason that I wanted to read you this was so that in the next session we can go over some of the major elements that I think are missing in a lot of the modern and New Age discourse about India and Indian traditions. And these are ways of resemblance, and I'll go into convenience, which is the proximity, adjacency, how things exchange properties through their adjacency and how that creates a resemblance, through their emulation, how things can emulate or reflect things from a distance, how the human face, for example, can reflect the sky, with the eyes being the sun and moon and so forth. Then we'll go into analogy, which is a word that, that I use again and again and again. And I think that if we are going to be able to examine speech in a way not dependent on a scientific paradigm and a post-enlightenment paradigm, then we have to be very familiar with analogy, as we can see analogy used continuously, for example, in Indian texts. Sympathy, which in Indian terminology is rajas, and we'll get into the three gunas, the three qualities of nature, which I hope you noticed that I described in the passage I just read from the book. And finally, signatures. Signatures, which are those marks on the surface of the world that indicate to us that there is a resemblance, that there are things happening, that there is an analogy, and points our attention to where these worlds meet. Now, the reason I'm saying this, again, is related back to speech, because we have a task ahead of us in which we have to be aware of, as I've been talking about, the prejudices that we bring into examining the whole world of speech, and making this distinction that I want us to eventually be able to make between sacred speech and ordinary speech, and finally to see how that plays in our world today. On the grand scale, on the mass media scale, it's obvious to all of us, I think. But on the personal scale, I believe that there's a lot of work that we can do in which we can more carefully attune ourselves to the natural rhythms and manifestations of speech, and hopefully obtain more sort of control and prosperity and well-being in our lives.